Hello everyone! Today we'll talk about conspiracy theories of automakers. The background of the issue is that we have a video on the channel about the EGR valve. In the comments to this video there are a lot of disputes and allegations that this valve and system were specially created in order to reduce the resource and mileage of the internal combustion engine. In this video, I want to tell you how the development of new cars actually takes place and how the resources and durability of these cars are actually planned. For you to understand, I worked as a design engineer and participated in the development of automatic transmissions, and I can imagine how this process works from the inside. When developing any new technical product, a so-called technical task is developed, and in this technical task there is always a paragraph that refers to the resource of this technical product. For example, for the development of automatic transmissions, in this paragraph it was written that the gearbox should work, let's say, 10,000 hours. At the same time, it was also scheduled that in first gear, for example, the box works 1,000 hours, in fifth 5,000 hours, and so on. Also, when developing new cars, it will necessarily indicate the mileage or the service life of the car. We don't know what specific mileage figures are laid down by various manufacturers, because this information is purely for official use. But by indirect evidence, it can be said that when designing and developing new cars, an average mileage is around 350,000 kilometers or 10 years of operation. A little later, I will explain why exactly these numbers and why not 20 years and not 1 million kilometers. The next point is that when developing new parts, these are several types of calculations. There are several types of calculations. For example, strength calculation. It is necessary to calculate the thickness of this ruler at which it will not break. The most difficult calculation is the calculation of durability, that is, how many such cycles will the ruler withstand before it breaks. This calculation depends on many factors. It depends on the type of applied force, then it depends on the nature of the load, a sharp load or some kind of smooth load. Also, durability depends on the material of this ruler. That is it a homogeneous material? Does it have some kind of surface hardening, coating, and so on? So in the last 20 years, a lot of engineering analysis programs have been developed to help engineers calculate durability. They were very actively introduced into the design bureaus of leading automakers. Special equipment was bought, special supercomputers that simulated the process of strength to durability of complex structures. For example, crash tests of a car body were simulated. So even 20-30 years ago, engineers did not have such special tools, special programs or computers. Therefore, engineers did not know how to calculate the durability of components very accurately, for example, the durability of an engine or of a transmission. And since engineers in the 80s were not able to accurately calculate durability, they laid down the large safety factors. For example, in those years, the gearbox was calculated not for 350,000 but for 700,000 kilometers, only because these calculations were inaccurate and a factor of 2.0 was laid down in order for the gearbox to actually travel at least these 350,000 kilometers or maybe more. An example is also the body of the car. In 90s or 80s, the thickness of the car body was greater than it is now. Now, when there is a virtual simulation of crash tests right on the computer, you can see that you have an extra thickness of the metal. Here you can make it thinner, here you can add a little. Therefore, the body of the car has been optimized, and in general, the thickness of the body has become smaller. Thus, its weight also decreased. The negative side of accurate body thickness calculations is that a thin body will rust faster. And there is one more thing. Now the resources of the internal combustion engine have become much less than before. This is also due to the fact that now the engines have become highly loaded, that is forced. Now they are trying to take as much power as possible from this engine. Various systems are hung on it, such as turbines, direct injection systems, and so on. Now the engine is running in a more loaded mode than 20-30 years ago. Well, for example, you all understand that now, for example, a 1.6 engine can produce 200 horsepower. 30 years ago, it was almost impossible. The next point, which follows from the previous one, is that cars now use a lot of complex engine systems, complex vehicle control systems, complex systems that are responsible for the environmental friendliness of the car. All these systems complicate the structure and increase the likelihood of its failure. That is, reduces durability as a whole. For example, the well-known Kalashnikov rifle works a long time only because it has very few parts, very few components in this system. Now a few words about the EGR valve and in general systems that are responsible for environmental friendliness. In fact, all automakers would be happy to get rid of these systems. These systems are imposed on them by ecologists. These systems, on the contrary, complicate the engines and some modifications have to be made in order to compensate for the operation of the engine as a whole. I am sure that if Volkswagen concern were told to throw away the EGR valve, they would gladly do it, because the complexity of producing this engine would decrease. It would not be necessary to use various algorithms for controlling this engine. So, conclusions. Now automakers, when developing new cars, plan for them to serve you for approximately 350,000 kilometers or 10 years of operation. And since modern engineering analysis systems allowed them to accurately calculate and model the resources, products and cars are designed very accurately for this period of time. To prove this, I can tell my personal story. I had a car a couple of years ago which just approached the mileage of 300,000 kilometers, and a lot of components and parts immediately shut down. This suggests that all the components were designed exactly for this mileage. Well, for example, a two-mass flywheel, a clutch release, a clutch, an EGR valve, various parts in general. The turbine shut down, then the fuel pump, and so on. Lots of sensors. Therefore, whether you like it or not, the facts show that cars are really now designed for about 10 years of operation, and there is nothing we can do about it. As for various environmental systems, including a catalyst or an EGR valve, automakers by no means want to install them on cars. On the contrary, they are forced to install them on cars so that they comply with the environmental standards. These systems, on the contrary, complicate the engine and complicate production, and everyone would be happy to get rid of them. It makes no sense to install a special system on the engine that would kill this engine and reduce its resource, because it is possible to reduce the engine resource at the design stage. You can use other materials, a different design, and the engine will fail and wear out at about this run without any EGR valves, without any catalysts and complex systems that are responsible for the environment. In fact, you can make an engine and you can make a car that will go 1 million kilometers and maybe even 2 million kilometers. There is no mystery in this. It's just that these numbers are written in the terms of reference. If they wanted to, then Volkswagen would have developed a car for you that would go a million kilometers. It would use other materials, other technical solutions, and there would be no problem in this. Perhaps a car that would go a million kilometers would cost more. And maybe not everyone would be ready to buy it. Now let's think about why these numbers, 10 years of operation. This is due to several reasons. The first reason is that the model of capitalism is based on the constant circulation of money. So it is not profitable for anyone to make eternal cars. If there is a car that will run for 50 years, why then do we need a Volkswagen plant? It will work for a couple years, and then what should it do? The second reason is that during these 10 years, the car will become outdated. New systems are being developed, new safety standards are being developed, new environmental standards also. And the fashion trends are constantly changing. Therefore, after 10 years, the car begins to look tired, both physically and mentally. As proof that technology is changing very quickly now, I can say that, as you know, in a few years the production of diesel cars will completely stop. Also, in a few years, diesel engines will be banned from entering major European cities. So it makes no sense now to produce diesel engines that will work for 50 years. It is not necessary. Or maybe in 10-15 years, we will all drive electric cars. Well, now the conclusion. There is no conspiracy or conspiracy theory of automakers. The usual capitalist approach is at work here. As they say, this is a business and there is nothing personal. When developing cars and components, these resources are simply being laid now. When developing cars and components, these resources are simply being laid now. And since engineers can count very accurately, they are respected. Previously, in the production of cars, their resource was increased due to the fact that they could not accurately calculate it. Yes, we all remember cars that passed 1 million kilometers. For example, there was such a model, the legendary BMW E39, which was considered to pass the 1 million kilometers. But this era has come to an end. Therefore, now we must adapt and look into the future. By the way, in order to pick spare parts for your cars and get competent advice, visit our website autoostrov.by. The link will be in the description. Thank you for watching. Be sure to leave your question in the comments. I think there will be a lot of controversy about this video. Also, if you like the video, be sure to like and subscribe to our channel. There will be a lot of interesting things ahead. And all the best to you. See you soon.